Reference. So you come up with an idea and you've shot some reference or you found some reference online. Where do you go from there? How do you find the poses that you're going to actually create in the software? How do you exaggerate that stuff? How do you exaggerate the timings? And how do you move away from the reference so it doesn't feel too rotoscopy? How do you study reference? How do you find what you're going to take from that reference and put it into your scene? Where's the balance of taking the good parts of the reference and implementing them? And how do you actually get that to work? I'm going to take you through some tips for that and things that I look out for. And we're going to do a little test where we take some reference, put it in Maya, exaggerate some things, and I can just show like a first blocking pass. So I found this cool little jump reference here, which I got from the Motion Actor Inc. YouTube channel. These guys have tons of reference clips. So let's break it down. Where are the key poses in this? So I think easy to start, you can say that the first frame is a key pose. Where that's something that we're actually going to put down in Maya, and it's an extreme. So an extreme, I'm looking at areas like the center of gravity when it kind of starts and stops and slows down, and when we get to these extremes where things ease in, turn around and ease back out. We're usually looking for the most extreme point. That would be usually a key in a lot of cases. So the first frame is definitely one of those. I'm going to scrub through. I think for an acting beat, this kind of settle where the head looks up is definitely a key. So we go from looking down to looking up with a tiny bit of a weight shift here over to the right, if you can see that. So that's kind of a clear key to me. So it's looking for our next extreme here. I think this up extreme before we go down for the anticipation and before the feet leave the ground here is a very good key. So we kind of hit our extreme in the cog here. You can look at this line. It's hit its top point before it's coming down, and it's doing the classic bouncing ball right now. It's going up to anticipate. It's got a little bit of hang time up here, and then it's speeding up to go back down. So you might have guessed it. The next key is the down. So let's find the down, which is here. So this is a key. Boom, boom. We could put the contact as key, but the feet are kind of offset from each other. So I'm going to kind of treat that more as a breakdown and treat the extremes of the cog as the actual keys. So then let's look, what else would be a key here? Which I'm looking at this line again. This is the top point. We're at the top of another bouncing ball. Everything is a bouncing ball. Everything's easing towards this position. So to me, this is definitely a key. Flip through what we got so far. Look up, anticipate the anticipation. Big anticipation down, big jump. And now I'm going to key the contact here, just because that's really valuable information for us in Maya. And then I will key, we have a down here. So I'm looking again at this line. We're at the bottom of the arc on this down. So I'm probably going to put a key here. I think that makes sense. And then this contact is probably a good point. So foot contacts and extremes, I think are definitely good points to put keys. So let's put a key here. Nice weight shift over where we kind of hit our extreme here. And then you have a nice settle for the final frame, which is definitely going to be a key. So if we flip through these keys, we kind of get an idea of the motion in general. Now we're missing some hang time in the jump, but I would consider those poses where we're favoring this top position as more of ease poses. They're more breakdowns where you're favoring the top position rather than actual keys. So again, we're looking for extremes in the center of gravity and we're looking for contacts. Those are the two things I'm looking out for most of the time when finding what poses to use in reference. So keep those in mind. So let's take these keys and let's put them in Maya and see how that all looks. So we're in Maya and I'm using the Stuart rig here just because it's a simple thing to get the point across. And what I have here is a software called Keyframe Pro, which is going to sync up my Maya scene with a little video here. And that way I can zoom in and out of it and move it around. It's basically the same as having an image plane in Maya, but I can move it around independently and I can keep it kind of separate. So if I move the camera around, I'm not going to lose the image plane and that kind of thing. So that's super useful. So here I've posed all of the extremes. I've not done the contacts yet, and there's a reason for that. The reason is I kind of view contacts as a bit of a breakdown. We're already moving from one extreme to the other position-wise. The weight is all the way up and it's going all the way down, and the contact is midway through here. The contact is happening around here. So instead what I do is I create those extremes first, and then I make breakdowns, which I interpolate between in order to get those contacts. So in this case, I'm gonna bias the up position because it's like a bouncing ball. We hang at the top and then we progressively speed up to the bottom position, and then we're gonna squish in and then bounce out again. So we're gonna bias back to the top a little bit. So on Tween Machine, I'm gonna go on the left side slightly, which is biasing the top, and I'm going to snap those feet to the contact, but then I'm gonna add more roll so there's a bit more room for it to absorb. And then basically I'm just gonna go through and make this pose with the lead and follow as a breakdown rather than as an entire pose. Doing it this way, you don't have to make a pose from scratch and you get a lot for free. And you basically just then have to go through and create arcs, lead and follow, bit of asymmetry, and all the normal kind of animation-y things as you go through. So that's what I'm doing here. So same again, we're going to find the next contact position, which I'm going to use as the push off, which is here. So this time we're kind of leading out of the pose and starting to bias up a bit. So I'm going to choose the pose on this side of Tween Machine and then snap the feet back to the previous position. But again, I need to work on the toe raise and foot roll. So we get a nice push off. And then yeah, I'm just going to focus on it as if it's a normal breakdown. Figure out the posing, create arcs and such. Focus on lead and follow, exaggerating certain elements of lead and follow that aren't as much in the reference, but that I think are valuable and that will add a lot. Dragging the jaw here, for example, making sure that things are arcing nicely. All right, so let's put in the next contact. Let's find that key. Here you go. So the foot push is in here. This is the contact. We're kind of biasing the top position a little bit here. So I'm going to put it on the left side of Tween Machine to bias the top position. And I'm going to push this down to be a contact, but then go nice big toe raise on this guy. And I'm going to add a little bit more squash and stretch than originally in there by delaying, you know, the head and the body, and the arms can continue to be delayed and to come over and around in arc. All right, so let's do the next contact, which is here. And we're definitely biasing this previous pose rather than our final pose. So let's figure that out. So here are all of the poses that are extremes and contacts, but there's still some big gaps and some information missing, like the hang time and a big gap at the end. So I'm just going to go in and add those extra keys. So this isn't stuff that I tracked out in the reference, but it's just stuff that you noticed when animating that we're missing big patches of stuff like right here. Add one in the middle here. And we're definitely biasing this final pose at this point. Make sure that things are arcing nicely. Cool. So during this pose, again, I'm thinking about what's leading, what's following. So I'm kind of thinking that it could be cool to delay the head a tiny bit more during this part. So I'm just going to use the rotations here to get that nice bit of overlap during this part. Since the head's kind of hitting its down position here, we can drag that more and arc it around. Cool. So we added a pose in here to make sure that this movement was described a bit more thoroughly. Also want to add a bit more information to this hang time. So I'm going to add a big ease in here so that we can get into this top position and add some break up to make sure that these arcs are working nicely. We can describe certain things like the break up looks missing right now. So things like here, the head, we can have it nice and delayed and continue to have that delay carry through to this pose. Cool. So we've added an ease in and now I'm going to add an ease out. So again, we're biasing the top position quite a bit here. But things like this leg, which has got quite a big movement on this frame, I'm going to have it continue to come up throughout this part. So the cog's coming down, but I'm going to delay things like the head and chest a tiny bit. And the arms continue their arc. Just making sure that these arcs carry through all of these poses. So now we've described the top of that jump with a little bit more hang time. So this is where we got right now. And I think this is a fine blocking pass for the time being. But there's certain things that I want to exaggerate and push. And this is where we start to detach from the reference. Right now, I'm going to untab the reference completely. And we're just going to have a look at the timing specifically. There's certain moments that I think would be cool to hold for a little bit longer. And certain moments that would be good to snap past a bit quicker. So we talked about the bouncing ball a lot, where we get to the extreme position and we come out and we kind of go quickly into the extreme position. The spacing gets smaller, the spacing gets progressively bigger as we come back out. So one thing with more stylized animation is the poses are held a little bit more and then you snap faster in and out of them. We get into that top position of the bouncing ball and the hang time is more during cartoony stuff. In real life, there's more of a consistent movement. Everything is continuously moving, nothing's really held. But in cartoony animation, we hit a pose, we flick out a pose, we hit another pose, we flick out of a pose, we hit another pose. So let's push a couple areas of timing. So for example, I want to hold this pose. I'm not going to hold the start for as long as they do in the reference because I don't think it's necessary. I'm going to hold this anticipation here because I think it's really cool. It's a cool pose where he's held like this. And then he's going to go down and push off. And we're going to hold the hang time of the jump longer. So let's do that. Maybe I'll have it be 4 frames on either side of the jump so that the hang time's longer. And then you can snap down faster. So instead of having this on 3 frames, I can have this on 2 frames. And I can make this part a lot quicker as well. So his weight shift happens a lot sooner. and then he can get into his final pose a lot sooner. So just by moving those keys around, we have all of the information there and all of the main parts that we need for a first blocking pass. And we've just retimed it to make it feel a bit more cartoony, have a bit more hang time in places, snap between poses a bit quicker, and it's just going to feel a lot nicer. So here's a quick comparison with where I got to with this blocking pass and the original reference. And as you can see, the timing is a lot more exaggerated in my version, and the poses are a bit more side on, which is a bit clearer with this kind of character. He doesn't really look good at all from the front. That's kind of common with most CG characters. They look best in all 3/4 angles. So that's why I pushed it that way. But yeah, hopefully those principles can help you guys out. You can break down any kind of shot this way. Even if it was an acting shot where you're going between less poses and there's more work within the pose, you can do this as a first pass to get your main pose changes down, and then go in and do this more on a more minuscule level. It's all the same principles, just how you integrate them in different ways. So I went in mostly on timing when moving away from your reference, but there's a bunch of other things to consider, like your posing, exaggerating arcs, exaggerating lead and follow, making snappier choices with your spacing, and just a bunch more stuff that will pull it away from the reference and more into the cartoony realm. And the more stylized you go, the more you push all of those things at once. So yeah, maybe a future follow-up video could go more on that stuff, but for now, this is where I'm going to leave it. Hopefully you can see how looking for extremes and contacts in your reference can get you those key poses and get you into Maya. And that's basically all the information you need. From there, it's just breaking those things down more and more, describing more the lead and follow, and then just getting more polishy as you get into spline. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Make sure to subscribe if you like animation stuff. I need to beat my friend Owen. He has overtaken me. Please help. Please help. Goodbye.